Pleasure to meet you, man. I'm super excited to chat to you about the film. I know you've had an insane schedule and a crazy schedule, so thanks for taking the time to chat, man.
My pleasure, buddy. Thank you. Good to speak
Oh,
with you.
thank you. I appreciate it. I want to get started on one thing that I love outside of the horror and the gore of the franchise, which is the mythology and the lore of Art the Clown. I think it's something that's really awesome. We don't see a lot in slasher films these days. But I'm curious to know what your process is in coming up with the mythology. Is it something that you have sort of as you've written each script and progressed, you kind of get an idea and want to explore it, or do you have an idea? Always had this idea of where the mythology of Art the Clown is going to start and where it's going to end.
No, I didn't know. I always toy with ideas of where I want to take the character. But once I wrote part two, and I knew that well, at the end of part one, when I decided to just officially just dive in and bring him back from the dead, and now he's officially this supernatural character. When I wrote part two, I said I'm diving into this aspect of the film, and I want it to be a character in and of
Mm,
itself. So because it's not something that's typically explored enough in these movies, meanwhile, all of the boogeymen become supernatural. They don't really describe or explain what that evil is. What is this energy that's bringing the this character back? And I thought that was so interesting and something that's greatly overlooked. So once I dove in there, I decided to just get really bold and very mythic and just take on the battle of good and evil, the heaven and the hell, just everything I could imagine. Because to me, if you're gonna make your villain as just this supernatural evil
mm,
now, this virtually unstoppable force, like how do you combat that? To me, if there's got to be a force of evil, there's got to be a force of good, and I wanted to sort of anoint this this final girl who's
mm.
the chosen one to take on Art, who's his benevolent counterpart. And that's when I decided to bring Sienna into the mix. And then it became just as much her journey for the rest of this saga, so to speak, as it is Art's journey. So I knew when I was writing that basically I had the blueprint with those two characters, and I knew where I was going to end that journey as I was writing part two. So it's just a matter of now how many movies can I pack in there until I get to that end zone, and not trying to force things in there that shouldn't be there. It's just like how many movies is it going to take organically for me to get to that end zone? And I mean, personally, I don't think I could do more than two more, if that.
Sure.
So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But I have a lot of ideas. Like I said, I have the blueprint. But I'm also always receptive, and I'm always receptive to better ideas. And if something hits me, inspiration, it could be a nightmare, it could be a dream that all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, that's the direction to go in now. So unless I'm like totally locked in and it's up on the screen, anything can change at any point. But until then, I do always have a blueprint. I know where I'm going. It's not just meandering and hoping you find out where you're going. Yeah.
That's sick. And as fans, like that's exciting for us to know that we've got this solid story awaiting us as well. And I'm curious to know with some of that inspiration, I'm assuming some of that may come through the collaboration, especially with David on Art, who has played this character for a while now, and he's got all these quirks and nuances. I'm curious to know how the evolution of writing Art as a character has been as the collaboration with David has grown. How much of what we see on the screen of his like quirks and nuances is in the script, and how much of that is you guys going, "Oh, this would be cool if Art did this now on set." I mean,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Believe it or not, I mean, I do write a lot of that. A lot of the detail is in the script, a lot of the jokes. I mean, sometimes even as I started writing like two and three. I would even put more details in the script,
oops,
like,
sorry, I just
oh,
lost you for like 10 seconds there. Sorry about that.
oh, sorry. No, no, no.
That's it.
Very, very specific with the way I write him, down to the jokes, sometimes even down to the facial expressions, gestures. I say, like sometimes in the script, I'll say, and then Art gestures as if to say this, that kind of stuff. So
Awesome.
I have a nice blueprint, and we'll go in there and I'll tell, David obviously read the script. He knows what it is. And, before we even really start improvising, we'll probably just do it my way for the first couple of takes, the way it's written in the script or what it is on.
Cool.
And then I allow David to go crazy, and he improvises. And so often he comes up with just these amazing things, like the amazing faces or even ideas. I mean, and I always share with him the script, the ideas that I have. months in advance, sometimes years in advance. We're constantly traveling together. We're on planes, we're at conventions and hotels, constantly eating together. So, I mean, we're always just sharing ideas. He throws ideas at me, I throw them at him. So, but one thing that is like all David, I mean, David is the physical embodiment of the character, like all of
Mm,
those quirky nuances, unless he's making a bold face, right?
sure.
Everything in between, all his walking, everything, all that stuff. I mean, that is just all David. It really
So
is. I
good.
mean, he brought that physicality to this character. When I first created the character and it was played by Mike Gianelli, there was none of
Mm,
that. He was way more like Michael Myers, just a lot colder, more stoic, the silent killer.
mm.
And then David brought this sort of theatricality, this flamboyance into the character, where it's actually a clown now. And David, he's got maybe three of my favorite scenes that he's ever done in the entire franchise in part three. And some of my just favorite collection of these beautiful faces that he makes, these nuanced expressions that come through in these specific scenes where I went up to him a couple of times and I told him, I said, buddy, this is like magic right now. I'm like, you're in the zone, basically, like it's
Mm.
happening. This is great. Sometimes you actually feel it on set. And I felt it a few times making this one. So it's a magic, we're always exploring the character and seeing how far we could push the levity,
Mm.
if we throw more humor out of the situation. And if we could pull more humanity out of the character, because those are the two things that the audience really responds to with Art
Oh,
the
I
Clown.
would I would absolutely agree. And I'm so glad you brought up levity because I'm always curious to ask, especially horror directors, about this like unique relationship between horror and comedy. It seems like two genres that are so on the opposite end of the spectrum, but weirdly, not only do they work together, but they complement each other in those things. So I'm curious to know when you sort of realized there was this really interesting relationship between horror and comedy, and then when you wanted to add that into this, in not just this franchise, but your films in general.
Well, I gravitated toward horror comedies as a kid. Some of my favorite movies are Evil Dead 2,
Yeah,
Return of the Living Dead, right? I mean,
so good.
nobody does horror comedy better than those two movies. Shaun of the Dead, right?
Yeah.
Years later. Those are perfect horror comedies. And that was never my style though as a filmmaker. I When I was making short films and stuff, there was no comedy. It was just straight dark, grim horror. That was my tone. But when I wrote Art the Clown, since he's a clown, we would get that, there was a little bit of humor in him when I first created him. And I really loved the awkward laughter, the uncomfortable laughter I would get from the audience with like
Yes.
with him just like honking the horn and giving somebody a flower and the way he would silently laugh. Like it would make people awkwardly, uncomfortably laugh. And I loved that. I
Yeah.
loved that reaction. It was something new to me. And then when I made the short film Terrifier, I injected more of that sort of humor into it. Like him going to the bathroom and smearing his shit on the
Shit
walls,
all
like
everywhere.
getting yelled at and like reacting like he's a kid and all these kind of things. And so it was just working, and I knew I had to keep injecting that into it. But then once David took on the role,
Mm.
it was just like floodgates open with the humor that we were able to pull out of that because he's a natural comedian. If anything, David leans more into comedy naturally than horror. He's not
Sure.
really a huge horror fan the way I am. He
Ah,
loves, he loves more theater and comedy. Those are the people that influence him, like the Marx
mm.
Brothers and Buster Keaton, Mr. Bean, Jim Carrey. Those are his heroes. So he organically draws from that, and it comes through. You can totally see it on screen.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess I want to go back to when you were saying there's about three scenes in this film that where that his reaction to something is one of those, the reaction to Santa in the bar, because that is the perfect example of what you were just explaining there.
Yep, yep. Him reacting to us. Him more so, more nuances. His expressions when he's like about to torture Santa Claus, and Santa Claus is just pleading with him.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole it's just he's so good in that scene. There's a
Mm,
few scenes like that where he just, like I said, he's in the zone, and it's sort of the character
yeah.
is taking over, really taking
It's
over.
it's so entertaining. I guess not wanting to spoil too much about the Santa scene and things in general, there is some insane kills. The Santa one to me, I was like, I'd never seen that before, and it got such a great reaction out of the crowd. I'm curious to know because there is a variety of kills across all three of these films. Do you have what I would, I guess, describe as like a Rolodex of death? Is there just like a whole bunch of ideas where you're like, okay, this is going to look awesome, and I can't wait to put this into a film?
I do. I
That's
do.
sick.
I have in the notes in my phone. I'm constantly putting ideas down in there, or an instrument, a weapon, a tool, something. I'm like, oh, he might be able to be creative with this. Uh, yeah, especially now, it's literally become my job. Like where
Yeah.
I have to do that for the audience for a living. It's like I have to figure out how to surpass the last big kill scene, which is not easy anymore.
Oh
Uh,
God, no.
especially, it was easier with part two because so many people still never saw Terrifier one. A lot of people just went
Right.
into part two blind, not knowing what they were in for, and then they were hit with the bedroom scene in the middle of the movie, and it freaked people out. It's like they never seen anything like that. A lot of people. So, but
Mm,
now with Terrifier 3, everybody's expecting that. It's like you can't really trick them that way. So you really got to deliver the goods. I mean, you really got to rise to the occasion, which we try and do regardless. I'm always trying to one up myself,
mm.
swing for the fences, deliver something bigger and better. But it is getting harder because there's only so many ways you can tear apart the human body, and
Yes.
you know, and we're not just competing with our own movies. We're competing with all the other horror movies and movies like Saw and
Yeah.
Eli, and so Rob Zombie. I mean, they're all out there doing their thing. So it's tricky. It's really getting. You got to get really creative.
Oh, shit, I can imagine. Is part of that creativity sound design? Because the sound design, not just for the kills and stuff for this film, but it just the little nuanced sounds that you have in the background of this film are so incredible. How important is sound design to horror?
Oh, it's crucial. It
Yeah.
is crucial. We actually we hired Martin Hernandez, who did the sound design on Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, he's worked with Guillermo del Toro. He worked on The Revenant. Like I can't believe that he actually worked on this. So this is an Oscar nominated sound designer. And we spent a month, maybe a little less than a month, I guess, in Mexico. That's where he is working on the sound design right before this movie premiered at Fantastic Fest.
Yeah.
Like I said, like it was, we went from Mexico with the fresh sound mix, like right into Fantastic Fest, where I kept telling
Sweet.
people if this movie was paint, if they would be wet right now, what you're about to listen to and hear.
Yeah.
So, but it was crucial. It's so crucial, especially for the opening 10 minutes of the scene of the movie where I really rely on sound design
Yeah,
specifically,
for sure. Yeah.
which is sort of the anti Terrifier method. Terrifier kills or
Sure.
everything is not that there isn't sound design. Of course, you need the crunching bones, the blood, and whatnot, but everything is visual. It's in your face,
Yeah.
relentless. This time, I wanted to do something where you're only hearing what's happening behind the door,
Yeah.
and it's the first big moment sort of in the movie. So that had to land, and it did. It did. So
Oh, it did.
Martin knocked it out of the park there. He really did for us.
I watched it just this weekend gone. It was like a sold out crowd here in Brisbane. And that when you hear that first thud, the groan in the room was just like, oh, this movie's not fucking around. Like, and it was so good. I
And,
want to close on the, oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, please.
No, I was gonna say, and then like we sort of blatantly draw a line in the sand and let you know like
Sure.
what this movie is. That's like happens at like the 6 minute mark. So if you can't handle that, I just say leave at that point. Don't test yourself. Like
It's not getting any better for you
it's gonna get
if
worse.
it's that.
Yeah.
I'd love. I'm getting close to my time. I'd love to close out on this based on just the reaction that I saw from crowds in my screening, and obviously everything we've read about people walking out and throwing up. I'm just curious to know what is the best reaction you've seen either to a crowd watching one of your films or one that you've experienced with a crowd yourself in a film. Is there a cinematic a crowd reaction that sticks out to you?
There's a few. I mean, just to speak about Terrifier 3, there was
Mm,
thunderous applause in a couple of the screenings after the big shower massacre.
sure. Yeah,
And
yeah, I can imagine.
to hear that was validating, is like
Mm,
because they came, like I said, they came to for that scene or a scene of that caliber.
yeah.
That's one of the staples of our franchise now, and the fact that they recognized that that was the scene and that we had done a good job and we delivered for them was great. So, but I think one of the most surprising responses I ever heard, and I'll never probably get another one, was for the original Terrifier.
Mm,
It was when Art pulls out the gun and shoots Tara in the leg.
yeah.
I never heard a combination of laughter, boos, cheers, screams. Like I never heard a sound
Wow.
like that before because it was so polarizing,
Yeah.
and it hit everybody on a different level. So that always stands out as a reaction. I'll never forget.
It's awesome, man. I think it speaks to like the good subversiveness of horror and this franchise, man. Like I love these films. Like I said, the having that mythology and lore in it is just sets it apart from the rest. And then you add all these like sicko mode horror kills on top. Like for us horror fans, man, it's awesome. So I know you had an insane schedule. Thank you so much again for taking the time, Damon. I appreciate it. I have like 100 more questions, so maybe we have to save them for the next
Yeah, buddy.
interviews. So I
Let's
appreciate your
do it.
time, man.
My pleasure. I appreciate yours, man. Thank you so much.